Silence is not just the absence of words, it's the presence of truth. And when you finally pull away, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop justifying your value to someone who never recognized it, she's suddenly left alone with a reality she avoided for far too long. Your silence forces her to examine the decisions she made from a place of impulse, ego, or emotional immaturity. It forces her to sit with the weight of her choices without the comfort of your reassurance. And that silence becomes louder than anything you could have ever said. In the beginning, she believes your silence is temporary. She thinks it's a phase, that you're just hurt, that you'll eventually come back, that she still holds the same influence over you. But as days turn into weeks and your energy remains distant, calm, and disciplined, she starts realizing that you're not just quiet, you're done explaining. You're done fighting for someone who walked away. You're done offering clarity to a situation she created. This is when regret slowly starts creeping in because now she sees that your silence isn't weakness, it's strength. And what makes it burn even more is the fact that silence leaves her alone with her own thoughts. All the moments she took for granted replay in her mind, all the effort you gave becomes clearer, and all the time she pushed you away now feel heavier than ever. She begins questioning herself. Was she too quick to walk away? Did she misjudge your value? Did she let her emotions guide a decision that logic would have prevented? Silence forces her into a confrontation with all the things she avoided while you were still speaking, still trying, still present. Your silence removes the emotional cushion she once leaned on. There's no more validation, no more safety net, no more guaranteed comfort. And when that emotional support disappears, she starts feeling the emptiness she thought she would never experience. This is where regret begins to ignite because you're no longer soothing the consequences of her decisions. She is now left to face them alone. But the most powerful effect of your silence is how it changes the dynamic completely. You're no longer reacting to her. You're no longer giving her the attention she assumed would always be there. You're no longer available. And the moment she realizes she no longer has access to you, not your energy, not your presence, not your heart, the regret becomes a fire she can't put out. Because silence makes her see what she couldn't recognize before. You were the stable force. You were the emotional foundation. You were the one who cared with depth, consistency, and intention. And losing that hits harder than any argument ever could. Your silence becomes the lesson she never saw coming. And the moment she realizes she has to live with the consequences of what she lost, the regret becomes unavoidable. Only then does she truly understand the power of your absence. Emotional detachment is one of the most powerful forms of strength a man can develop, and when it finally shows, it hits her in a way she never prepared for. In the beginning, she believed she had emotional influence over you. She believed that your reactions, your responses, your feelings, and your decisions would always revolve around her presence. She thought she was the center of your emotional world because for a long time you made her feel that way. And when someone feels emotionally secure in your attachment, they begin to assume that attachment is permanent. They begin to believe that no matter what happens, they can still pull your heartstrings whenever they want. But the moment you detach quietly, calmly, and without bitterness, everything changes. Your emotional detachment marks the shift from needing her to understanding that you can live fully without her. It's the moment your focus returns to your purpose, your growth, your goals, and your identity. And that shift becomes her strongest trigger because it destroys the illusion she once relied on. She sees that she no longer has access to your emotional reactions. She sees that her presence or absence no longer dictates your mood. She sees that the man who once cared deeply now carries a sense of peace that doesn't include her. This shift is powerful because detachment isn't anger and it isn't revenge. It's the clarity that comes when a man realizes he doesn't need validation from someone who walked away from him. Your calmness becomes intimidating. Your stillness becomes mysterious. Your lack of reaction becomes a story she can't decode. Detachment makes her wonder what changed. It makes her question what caused your energy to shift. And that curiosity grows into insecurity because she starts to see that she is no longer in control of how you feel. When you stop being emotionally available, she starts to feel something she didn't expect: doubt. She wonders if someone else has your attention now. She wonders if your heart is opening to a new path, a better life, or a new version of yourself she no longer recognizes. She wonders if she misjudged your value when she had you. Because emotional detachment doesn't look like a man who's hurt. It looks like a man who has outgrown the situation entirely. And the most painful moment for her is when she sees that your emotional detachment makes you more attractive now than ever before. Because a man who doesn't need is a man who stands strong. A man who is grounded emotionally is a man women realize they underestimated. Detachment makes her understand that she wasn't the one who walked away. She was the one who lost access. And that realization burns deeper each day because emotional detachment is the one thing she can't reverse with an apology, a message, or a moment of weakness. It shows her that the version of you she once knew no longer exists, and she now has to live with that truth. Growth has a way of exposing the truth people never wanted to see. When you begin transforming quietly, consistently, and without announcing it, something powerful happens inside her. She starts to compare who you were with who you are becoming. And this comparison is exactly where regret begins to take root because now she sees the version of you she always hoped you would become, but she's seeing it from the outside without access, without influence, without a place in your evolution. In the relationship, she might have seen your potential, but doubted your discipline. She may have assumed you would stay stuck in old habits, old patterns, old insecurities. She may have labeled you as someone who wasn't ready, someone who needed too much reassurance, someone who depended on her emotionally. But when you step into silence and turn all that emotional energy inward, she suddenly sees the truth. You weren't incapable, you were just unbalanced. And the breakup became the fuel that pushed you into a better version of yourself. The moment she notices even the smallest signs of your improvement, your posture, your confidence, your tone, your purpose, something inside her shifts because now she understands you didn't stay broken after she left. You didn't collapse. You didn't dwell. You rebuilt. And rebuilding is the exact thing she never thought you would do so quickly or so strongly. She sees you leveling up in areas she once criticized you for. The discipline she used to think you lacked is now your foundation. The emotional stability she once doubted is now your strength. The confidence she wished you had is now the trait you carry naturally. And each improvement you make becomes a reminder of the man she walked away from, not realizing the man you would eventually become. What hurts even more is that your growth isn't about her at all. You're not improving to win her back. You're improving because life demanded it, because heartbreak forced clarity, because silence brought perspective. She starts to see that everything she wanted from you is now being developed without her influence. And that realization burns because it forces her to accept that she didn't leave a finished product. She left a man who was on the edge of greatness. Your transformation becomes the contrast she can't escape when she compares you to the men she meets afterward. They don't carry your drive. They don't reflect your discipline. They don't match your emotional depth. They don't have your hunger. And in that comparison, regret begins to deepen because she now understands that potential isn't enough. Execution is what separates one man from the rest. And you, through silence and self focus, chose execution. The new version of you represents everything she once hoped for, but now she watches you evolve from a distance, unable to participate, unable to claim, unable to return to the space she once held. And that distance is exactly where regret grows strongest. Because nothing hurts more than realizing the man she lost is becoming the man she always wanted, just not for her. There comes a moment when your silence stops feeling like distance and suddenly becomes a mirror, one she never expected to look into. At first, she may have believed you were just doing what most men do after heartbreak, waiting, hoping, lingering in the emotional aftermath. She may have assumed you were still available, still attached, still orbiting around her decisions. But when silence continues, not as a tactic, not as punishment, but as a genuine shift in how you value yourself, it forces her to confront something uncomfortable. She no longer has access to you. When she cannot reach you emotionally, mentally, or energetically the way she once could, she begins to feel the absence in a way she didn't anticipate. The version of you she remembers, the man who cared deeply, who tried hard, who showed up, has gone quiet, not bitter, not resentful, just unavailable. That quietness starts to eat at her because silence, when rooted in self respect, is louder than any argument, louder than any explanation, louder than any attempt to prove your worth. She begins to wonder what changed, not because she wants to reconnect, but because she can't understand how the man who once gave her so much attention can now give her absolutely nothing. That shift isn't just unexpected, it's unsettling. It shows her that you no longer need her validation. It shows her that your world continues to expand without her presence. It shows her that your silence isn't emptiness, but evolution. The more she notices your detachment, the deeper her curiosity grows, not because she wants control, but because she senses she has lost it. And this loss of emotional influence is exactly where regret begins to build. She starts replaying memories not out of longing, but because silence makes her question her decisions. Did he really move on? Did he really stop caring? Did he really outgrow this? These questions become the quiet anxiety she never expected to feel. And while she tries to piece things together, you are not waiting. You're not trying to be noticed. You're not acting mysterious. You're simply living with a different level of purpose and clarity. That natural forward movement creates an energy she cannot ignore. It's the absence of neediness, the absence of emotional dependency, the absence of the old version of you. Silence becomes powerful because it's the first time she sees you through a new lens, not the man who was always available, but the man who learned to stand alone. That transformation stings because it shows her something she never saw when she had you, your strength. And the truth is, silence makes her confront the reality she avoided The fact that losing you wasn't just the end of a relationship, it was the beginning of her regret. One of the most overlooked moments in this entire process is the realization she faces when she sees you operating at a level she never witnessed while you were with her. This is the stage where regret truly deepens because it forces her to confront a truth she never accounted for. You didn't fall apart without her, you elevated. And that elevation hits harder than anything you could have said. When she sees you moving differently, thinking sharper, living cleaner, carrying yourself with a quiet, grounded confidence, she begins to understand that your silence wasn't emptiness, bitterness, or emotional shutdown. It was growth. It was the start of a transformation that happened outside of her influence, beyond her reach, and without her approval. That's what burns. Because while she expected time to weaken you, it ended up refining you. You became more disciplined, more focused, more intentional, and more self-directed than ever before. She notices it in the way you carry yourself now, your posture, your calmness, your presence. There's a maturity to you that wasn't there before, a steadiness that shows you've stopped chasing validation and started building your value. And what makes this shift even more powerful is that you didn't announce it. You didn't post it to prove something. You didn't parade it around. You simply became it. That's what makes regret unavoidable for her. Women don't regret the man you were when the relationship ended. They regret the man you become afterward. They regret the potential they didn't recognize, the effort they didn't appreciate, the loyalty they took for granted. And when you evolve silently, without spite, without games, that regret intensifies because it shows her something she never imagined. She was the last version of your life where you were still unsure of yourself. Now she sees the version of you that another woman will experience, the upgraded version, the disciplined version, the self-aware version, the version that no longer doubts his worth or questions his path. And that realization cuts deep because she knows she had access to a man who was willing to give, willing to learn, willing to build. And she lost him before he grew into everything he was meant to be. Your success, your growth, your improvement. It's not about making her jealous. It's not about getting revenge. It's about aligning with your potential. But ironically, nothing burns more than watching someone you once had exclusive access to become someone you can no longer reach. That's when silence becomes unmistakable power. Not because you ignored her, but because you stopped needing her. And that's when the regret hits hardest, when she realizes she didn't just lose you, she lost the man she never allowed herself to truly see. And that's the moment she knows she can't get back. The final stage in this entire dynamic, where regret settles in the deepest, is when she realizes that your silence wasn't a tactic, it became a lifestyle. This is the point where she finally understands that you didn't stay quiet to get a reaction from her, to make her chase, or to manipulate the situation. You stayed quiet because you genuinely moved on from needing her energy, her attention, or her validation. And that shift is something she cannot reverse because it wasn't a temporary emotional response. It was a permanent internal upgrade. When a man reaches this place, his silence no longer feels like a punishment she can wait out. It feels like a boundary she can't cross. She starts noticing that you're not only absent, but unreachable, not because you blocked her, but because you grew past the version of yourself that once wanted her approval. And the more she realizes this, the heavier the regret becomes. Regret doesn't come from your absence. It comes from knowing you're living a life where she no longer fits. She'll notice that you no longer react to things that used to control your emotions. You're not watching her stories, not asking mutual friends about her, not dropping hints that you miss her. You're simply living present, focused, grounded. That kind of emotional discipline is rare. And when she sees it in you, it forces her to reflect on her own actions. She begins replaying the relationship in her mind, questioning why she pushed away a man who now shows qualities she always claimed she wanted. This is when she starts comparing the men she meets after you to the man you've become. And that comparison hurts because they don't measure up. They're not as patient. They're not as steady. They're not as committed. They don't have the depth, the drive, or the character she overlooked when it came to you. That contrast alone begins to eat at her because it makes her see the value she dismissed, the value it took losing you to finally understand. But the most painful part for her is realizing that your silence means you no longer need her closure, her apology, or her attention. You've closed your own chapter. You healed in private. You rebuilt without her help. And now she can feel that shift in your energy, even from a distance. She knows that reaching out won't restore what once existed. She knows the door may still be there, but the man behind it has changed. And that's what burns, the understanding that time didn't weaken you, it empowered you. Your silence became the proof of your strength. It became the proof that you're a man who doesn't cling when someone walks away. And the moment she recognizes that, her regret becomes permanent because she knows she didn't just lose a relationship, she lost a man who outgrew her absence and found himself in the process. And that's when she finally understands the weight of her decision.